Charlie Kirk's death was one of the most shocking events in recent American political history. Known as the founder of Turning Point USA, he had become one of the most visible conservative figures of his generation. On September 12, 2025, news broke that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated during a public event. The incident sent shockwaves across political and media circles. Within hours, law enforcement confirmed the arrest of a suspect, and the investigation was launched at the federal level. What followed was an outpouring of grief from political allies, supporters and critics alike. In the days after his assassination, preparations began for a funeral service that would gather political leaders, family members, and supporters. It was not only a farewell to a political figure, but also a deeply personal moment for his family. On the day of the burial, attention quickly focused on one heartbreaking scene. His young daughter stood by his grave, unable to contain her grief. She cried openly, surrounded by family and the public, and this moment became symbolic of the human cost of political violence. The image of a daughter crying at her father's grave was carried across the country through news reports and live coverage. But it was what followed that made the moment even more powerful. Shortly after the funeral, a video surfaced online that showed a side of Charlie Kirk the public rarely saw. It was a personal video of him with his daughter, filmed in private months before his death. The footage was shared by family members as a way to honor his memory, but it quickly went viral, reaching millions of views within hours. The video showed Kirk in his role as a father rather than a political leader. In it, he was seen spending time with his daughter, speaking to her about faith, family, and values. The contrast between the tragic image of her crying at his grave and the joyful video of their moments together struck a deep emotional chord across the nation. Supporters described the video as incredible, not because of production or presentation, but because it captured the personal dimension of a man who had largely been seen through a political lens. For Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, the funeral was not only a moment of farewell, but also one of strength. She spoke during the service, thanking those who had supported the family and the organization during the difficult days following his death. Her remarks acknowledged law enforcement, political allies, and ordinary citizens who had reached out with messages of support. But she also made a public commitment. She vowed that Charlie's work would continue. This promise carried weight because of what came next. Just days after his burial, Turning Point USA announced that Erica Kirk would assume the role of CEO, stepping into the leadership position that her husband had held since founding the organization. The decision was met with both support and scrutiny. Supporters viewed it as a natural continuation of Charlie's legacy, while critics questioned whether the organization could maintain its momentum under new leadership. Nevertheless, Erica made it clear that she intended to honor his vision and keep the movement active. The funeral also drew national attention for the high-profile figures who attended and spoke publicly about the tragedy. Former President Donald Trump called Charlie Kirk a patriot who gave everything for his country. Vice President J.D. Vance echoed similar sentiments, framing the assassination as a reminder of the dangers faced by outspoken political figures. Across the conservative political landscape, leaders issued statements of grief and solidarity. Even some critics, who had often opposed Kirk's views, acknowledged the tragedy of his sudden death and extended condolences to his family. As the investigation developed, details about the suspect began to emerge. Authorities revealed that the suspect had a history of online threats and political extremism. Prosecutors announced formal charges, including first-degree murder and terrorism-related offenses. The Department of Justice stated that security for public political events would undergo review in light of the incident. These developments reinforced the national conversation about political violence and security in the United States. While the investigation unfolded, public attention remained fixed on the Kirk family. The video of Charlie Kirk with his daughter continued to circulate widely online, accompanied by messages of sympathy from people who said the footage helped them see him in a new light. Social media platforms recorded millions of engagements with the video, making it one of the most shared family tributes in recent memory. The moment also raised questions about how families of public figures deal with tragedy. For Charlie's daughter, the image of her crying at the grave was deeply personal, but it quickly became part of the national news cycle. Analysts debated whether such coverage was respectful or exploitative, but the widespread agreement was that it revealed the vulnerability behind public personas. The incredible impact of the viral video, combined with the grief captured at the funeral, reminded the public that behind political movements are real families and real loss. Charlie Kirk's children became part of the conversation about his legacy. While his daughter's emotional moment received the most attention, commentators pointed out that he had often spoken about the importance of family in his speeches and writings. The fact that a video of him speaking to his daughter about values surfaced at this time was seen by many as symbolic. It reinforced the image of Kirk not only as a political activist, but also as a father whose teachings at home were aligned with his public advocacy. Turning Point USA faced immediate challenges after his death. The organization had built much of its identity around Charlie's leadership style and visibility. In the absence of its founder, questions arose about how it would adapt. Erica Kirk addressed these concerns in her first public statement as CEO. She declared that the mission of the organization was larger than one person and promised that the structures her husband had built would remain intact. Supporters rallied around this message, providing donations and pledges of continued involvement. Meanwhile, political commentators assessed the long-term impact of Charlie Kirk's death on the conservative movement. Some argued that his passing would create a vacuum that others would attempt to fill. Others believed that his legacy would grow stronger because of the circumstances of his death, with his family and supporters ensuring that his message continued. What remained clear was that the event had shifted the conversation, drawing attention not only to political divisions, but also to the personal sacrifices tied to public life. As weeks passed, the focus on Erica Kirk intensified. Her role as both widow and new leader positioned her at the center of national attention. Interviews highlighted her resilience, and she repeatedly returned to the same theme. Her husband's mission would continue, and their family would remain committed to faith, family, and country. Observers noted that her public appearances struck a balance between mourning and determination, the incredible development that began with a daughter crying at her. Father's grave had expanded into something broader. It was not only the viral video, but also the way the family stepped into the spotlight, turning personal grief into a renewed public mission. For many, this combination of personal tragedy and public resilience defined the story in the weeks that followed. By the time the first month after Charlie Kirk's death came to a close, the narrative had settled into two clear dimensions. The first was the ongoing legal process, with the suspect facing trial and authorities pledging to prevent similar attacks. The second was the legacy of Charlie Kirk, carried forward through his family, his organization, and the viral reminders of his personal life. In closing, the story of Charlie Kirk's daughter crying at his grave and the incredible moment that followed became one of the most striking narratives of the year. It was not simply about a political figure's death, but about how a private family moment transformed into a national symbol. The grief of a child, the determination of a widow, and the continuation of a movement together shaped a story that will be remembered as a defining episode in American political and personal life.